Strokes. They are brain attacks. They're also the 5th leading cause of death in the United States, and they happen when blood flow to an area of the brain is cut off. It causes parts of the brain to die, parts that don't come back. Survivors are often impaired for life. But a breakthrough treatment is changing all of that. It's called thrombectomy, and what it is doing for people is something you have to see for yourself.
Do you guys want a snack? Sit at the counter.
In their home almost an hour south of Atlanta, Case and Cannon Danbury climb the kitchen stools to gobble down their after-school snack prepared by their mom. The chopping of fruit, seemingly mundane, is extraordinary once you realize that the reason Audrey Danbury can maneuver through her kitchen, can chase her boys around the front yard, is because of a treatment so revolutionary it has been compared to what penicillin did for treating infections.
I work in the athletic department at the University of West Georgia, and I am an assistant athletic director. It was just kind of a regular day.
Until it wasn't.
I was sitting in my office at my desk, just behind my computer. Just could not focus on the computer screen. There's 2 screens, and it was just like everything was blurred. Just kind of started feeling dizzy and off balance, and tried to stand up in my office and just kind of was leaning over. Couldn't stand up straight, really.
Audrey made her way out of her office, where she ran into strength and conditioning coach Monty Curtis, who asked,
"Are you all right?" And she couldn't respond.
I just was looking at him, and at that point I realized I couldn't talk.
Monty went from thinking she was upset to realizing something was very wrong.
Something's not right here. I could tell that she wanted to say something to me, but she couldn't get it out.
He called 911, then his wife, who is a nurse. She told him Audrey was having a stroke.
It's got to happen now. I mean, time is like of the essence. She's got to get medical attention now.
In the back of an ambulance, Audrey would hear that word for the first time to describe what was happening to her, her inability to speak or use her right arm.
I could hear her radio to their evac group saying that 28-year-old possible stroke, we want to take her to Grady.
The patient is in his 80s.
Close your eyes again. Open them.
Symptoms began 3 hours ago.
Try not to move, okay? Try not to move.
He cannot move his left arm or leg.
The good news is that he happens to have a lot of help from other arteries, meaning that his brain is not dying fast.
Within a matter of minutes, he is in the angiography suite where the team will perform a thrombectomy. A catheter is threaded through his femoral artery in his groin up into the right middle cerebral artery of his brain, where a clot is blocking the artery. A device called a stent retriever will do just that, retrieve the clot and pull it from his body.
Now you can see they're pulling back the catheter, so they're removing the stent retriever now. You can see the little dots on the stent retriever. The clot's right in there, it's coming down the neck, and now they're going to pull it out and see if they have any clot on it.
This angiogram is a picture of the brain's blood vessels using contrast. The clot has been blocking blood flow to the right side of the brain. After the stent retriever successfully grabs the clot.
So now you're going to see the blood flow here, if he doesn't move too much. Yeah, so that was all not there before. So angiographically, a perfect result.
Dr. Raul Nogueira, director of the Neuroendovascular Division at Grady, shows the clot hanging on the tip of the catheter. Something so tiny, wreaking such havoc, causing hundreds of thousands of strokes and thousands of deaths each year.
I understand. I heard 65 years of marriage. I got you. Well, this gives him the best chance, and so far no complications that we've detected, but it's still early, like I said, and you know, there is always, we're not sure which direction this is going to go, but we give him the best chance by doing this. So the artery's opened again, which is good. That means the right side of his brain has got the blood flow back, and hopefully that'll allow him to improve.
Before he leaves Grady, the man will recover 90% of his function and will walk out on his own with his wife of 65 years.
It's nothing short of a revolution for stroke patients. It's a very, very powerful treatment.
For a long time, the story of stroke was consistently dismal. Despite advances, the end result was often death or permanent disability. Grady was a top site in a clinical trial for tissue plasminogen activator, or TPA, known as the clot-busting drug. It has been in use for over 20 years, but it must be given within 4.5 hours, and the bigger the clot, the less likely it is to work. Enter thrombectomy, the mechanical removal of a clot from a blood vessel.
We are on average close to doing 1 thrombectomy a day here at Grady Memorial.
Grady was a top site in a definitive trial in 2015 that showed that thrombectomy improved outcomes when done within 6 hours.
Think of a stroke as a forest fire. It starts small, it burns a few trees, and over time it's going to burn the whole forest.
The forest fire theory of stroke is that each brain is different, and that the fire that is stroke spreads at different rates, varying brain to brain. What is burned will not come back. So the goal is to save as much forest, as much brain as possible. Dr. Nogueira believed that thrombectomy could help outcomes even beyond the 6-hour window. The only way to find out was to prove it. So he designed and led the landmark study completed in 2018 called the Dawn Trial. It shattered the 6-hour window, proving thrombectomy can be effective up to 24 hours after a stroke. The Dawn Trial had a global impact. As the name suggests, a new day, a new era of stroke treatment had arrived. The American Heart Association deemed it a top research breakthrough of the year. The forest fire analogy fits hand in glove with what Nogueira calls the brain's blood vessels, the tree.
It really looks like a tree. You have a trunk, and then that trunk will bifurcate, will branch out several times, and then you have several different brains.
Before now, when a stroke happened and a bigger clot lodged in one of the bigger arteries, there was little to be done. Not anymore. Director of the Marcus Stroke and Neuroscience Center at Grady, Dr. Mike Frankel.
The difference between a patient getting this procedure and not getting the procedure is dramatic.
As in the case of Audrey Danbury, who had a clot blocking blood flow in her left middle cerebral artery.
The blood clot deprives oxygen from getting to the left side of the brain, and it turns off the electricity, which basically makes it impossible to move your right side and impossible to speak or even to understand. If we can intervene before the brain dies, even though it's electrically not working, there's a window of opportunity, and opening that artery can turn the electricity back on and only have a little bit of damage as opposed to a lot of damage. And that means being able to walk, being able to talk, being able to get back to your activities of daily living, and potentially even your occupation, all these things.
There is a saying in the world of stroke, time is brain. And on the day Audrey Danbury had her stroke, time was on her side.
From the time 911 was called to them landing at Grady and handing me over was within 45 minutes.
But time was against her husband, Ryan, who was in Charleston, South Carolina for his monthly Air Force Reserve weekend when the doctors at Grady called him.
They started telling me everything. I knew what a stroke was, and when they told me we think she's having a stroke, I'm like, there's no way, like that's impossible. She's 28, healthy.
It's amazing that I do remember everything, and I can, be able to say how incredible that everything happened and be in that moment just wondering, was I ever gonna see any of them again?
Audrey's stroke was severe. Doctors say without thrombectomy, she would have been permanently impaired or died. Instead, they retrieved the clot and she woke up.
I felt fine, I mean, really.
And then she called her husband, still racing back to Atlanta.
I just said, hey, and it was, silence.
Well, I had 3 hours to think about everything you could possibly think about after suffering a stroke. That was the worst 3 hours of my life.
There were no effects afterward, nothing. And doctors never found the cause of Audrey's stroke. She was told chances of it happening again are incredibly slim. These days, the mundane is a gift.
What is that?
That's the dishes.
And the dish ran away with the spoon, is that how it goes?
And when you look at this, before and after, you realize this is the tree, and thrombectomy is giving it life.